"Get that mutt out of here. This is a restaurant, not a dog kennel." The harsh words, delivered with a sneer by a young, slick-haired manager, cut through the hum of polite conversation and clinking silverware like a shard of glass. An 87-year-old man, seated quietly in a corner booth, barely touched his soup, his worn hands trembling slightly, but not from age. It was a tremor of something else, something buried deep. He was Sam, or Mr. Ainsworth as some of the older folks called him, a fixture in this small town, known only for his quiet ways and his habit of nursing a single cup of coffee for hours at the diner. He wasn't in the diner today, though. He was here in the slightly more upscale Oakwood Grill, a rare treat, watching the scene unfold with a quiet intensity that went unnoticed by the brash young man. The target of the manager's scorn wasn't just a dog, but a beautiful, calm golden retriever wearing a service vest, lying peacefully beside a young woman in a wheelchair. The woman's face was a mask of weary frustration, a look Sam knew too well to honor the quiet strength of heroes like Sam and the dignity of those who rely on service animals. Type respect in the comments below. Sam Ainsworth was a man time had seemingly forgotten. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, his sparse hair a wispy white halo. He wore clothes that were clean but undeniably old, a faded flannel shirt, practical corduroy pants, scuffed but sturdy work boots. He moved slowly, deliberately, like someone who carried a great weight, not in his bones, but in his soul. Most people saw an old man, perhaps a retired farmer or factory worker, living out his twilight years in obscurity. Few knew, or remembered, the sharp mind, the unwavering resolve, or the chilling experiences that lay beneath the surface of his gentle demeanor. His past wasn't just retired. It was deeply, meticulously buried. He preferred it that way. After a lifetime lived in shadow, anonymity was a welcome cloak. He lived in a small, humble house, kept meticulously neat with sparse furnishings. There were no medals on display, no framed certificates, nothing that hinted at the extraordinary life he had once led. He spent his days tending a small garden, reading historical texts, and sometimes just sitting on his porch swing, watching the world go by with eyes that had seen too much to ever be truly at ease. The Oakwood Grill was a departure from his routine, a moment of quiet observation interrupted by escalating cruelty. The young woman, Sarah, her face pale with humiliation and anger, tried to explain. "He's a service dog, sir. He's medically necessary for my condition. He's perfectly trained and not bothering anyone." Her voice was trembling. The golden retriever, Duke, sensing her distress, nudged her hand gently with his nose, his eyes soft and intelligent. The manager, whose name tag read Brad, scoffed, running a hand through his slick hair. "Service dog? Looks like a pet to me. And even if he is, I've had complaints. People don't want animals in here while they're eating. It's unhygienic. Company policy." His eyes scanned the room, seeking affirmation from other patrons who were now watching the scene unfold, some with discomfort, others with indifference. A few patrons nearby mumbled agreement, casting nervous glances towards Duke. Brad puffed out his chest, enjoying the small surge of authority. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or put the dog outside," Sarah gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "Put him outside? I can't. He's trained to alert me. If he's not with me, I could have a seizure." Brad shrugged, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Not my problem, lady. This is a private establishment. We reserve the right to refuse service. Now, are you leaving? Or do I need to call the police for trespassing?" Sam watched, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. He saw the fear, the vulnerability in Sarah's eyes, the silent loyalty in the dog's posture. He saw the casual cruelty of the young man, drunk on petty power, completely blind to the dignity and necessity of the service animal. It wasn't just about a dog. It was about dismissing someone's needs, someone's right to participate in public life, simply because it was inconvenient. He recognized the pattern, the strong preying on the vulnerable, the ignorant dismissing the essential. Slowly, deliberately, Sam pushed his unfinished soup bowl away. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, placed it neatly on the table, and pushed himself up from the booth. Every eye in the vicinity turned towards the old man who rarely spoke above a whisper. Brad glared at him. "Something wrong, Grandpa? Your soup cold." Sam ignored him, his gaze fixed on Sarah and Duke. He walked over to their booth, his gait slow but steady. He stood beside Sarah's wheelchair, a silent, unassuming sentinel. He didn't say anything immediately, just placed a hand gently on the back of Sarah's chair, a gesture of quiet solidarity. Then he turned his gaze towards Brad. "Leave them be," Sam said, his voice soft, but carrying an unexpected weight that made a few people near him lean in. It wasn't loud, but it was firm, utterly devoid of hesitation. Brad laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Oh, look, the old man wants to play hero. Buzz off, Grandpa. This doesn't concern you." She and her dirty dog are leaving. He took a step towards Sarah and Duke, reaching a hand out as if to usher them away. That's when the air in the restaurant seemed to change. Sam didn't move, didn't raise his voice, but something in his posture, in his eyes, shifted. They weren't the eyes of a tired old man anymore. They were sharp, focused, cold. It was the look of a predator assessing threat, calculating response. "I said," Sam repeated, his voice dropping slightly, "leave them be." His hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the back of Sarah's wheelchair, a protective gesture. Brad stopped short, caught off guard by the sudden intensity radiating from the old man. He recovered quickly, his face flushing with annoyance. "Listen, pal, you're interfering with my job. Get back to your table before I have security throw you out too." He glanced around, seeking the support of his minimum-wage security guard, a hulking young man leaning lazily by the entrance. Sam didn't look away from Brad. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "I wouldn't advise that." The quiet conviction in his tone was unnerving. Brad sneered. "Oh yeah? And why not? What's an old geezer like you gonna do?" He gestured dismissively at Sam's worn clothes. "You probably haven't even seen the inside of a gym in 50 years. The security guard started to walk over, a bored expression on his face. Sam didn't react to the insults. His gaze remained fixed on Brad. "Some things," Sam said slowly, deliberately, each word landing with quiet force, "you learn not in a gym, but in places you pray you never see. Places where the only thing that matters is the man standing next to you, and the mission." He paused, and for a split second, a flicker of something dangerous, something ancient, crossed his face. "And I learned," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "how to protect those who cannot protect themselves, against men who mistake quiet for weakness." Brad rolled his eyes. "All right, tough guy. Security. Get him out of here." The security guard reached for Sam's arm. Sam shifted slightly, a movement so subtle it was almost missed, but the security guard flinched back instantly, stumbling. He swore under his breath, rubbing his wrist. He looked at Sam with sudden wariness. The old man hadn't even appeared to touch him, yet the effect was clear. Brad stared, confused, then angry. "What the hell was that, Tony? Just grab him." Sarah, watching this exchange with wide eyes, reached for her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice steadier now, empowered by Sam's unexpected defense. Brad smirked. "Fine. Call them. They'll tell you the same thing. No dogs allowed. This is private property." Sam spoke again, cutting through the tension. "Who owns this establishment?" he asked, still looking at Brad. Brad hesitated, thrown by the question. Mr. Peterson." "Why? You gonna complain?" "Good luck with that." Sam nodded slowly. "Peterson. Robert Peterson." Brad's eyes narrowed. "Yeah. You know him? Doesn't look like his crowd." Sam gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We've met. A long time ago." He reached into his worn coat pocket, his movements slow and precise. He pulled out a small, well-worn leather wallet. He opened it, revealing a few faded cards and cash. Neatly tucked behind his driver's license was a small, plain, silver pin. It was unremarkable in appearance, just a simple circle with a star inside. He didn't take it out, just angled the wallet slightly so Brad could see it. "When you speak to Mr. Peterson," Sam said, his voice quiet but resonating through the suddenly silent room, "tell him you asked Sam about this." He tapped the pin lightly with a fingertip. "And mention the name Nightingale." Brad stared at the pin, then at Sam's face, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The name Nightingale meant nothing to him. But the old man's demeanor had undergone a startling transformation. The tired lines on his face seemed less like weariness and more like etched history. The quiet intensity was now a palpable force. Still, he was a manager with a policy to enforce. "Look, I don't know what that is or who Nightingale is, but I have a job to do. Either you leave, or I call the cops and have you both removed." He pulled out his own phone, starting to dial. Sam didn't flinch. He simply nodded. "As you wish." Sarah finished her own call, her voice now firm. "The police are on their way," Brad smirked. "Good. They'll back me up." The restaurant patrons were now openly staring, a mix of curiosity, unease, and anticipation on their faces. Duke the Golden Retriever remained calm, his head resting on Sarah's lap, a silent, unwavering presence. The next hour was a tableau of simmering tension. Brad stood his ground, occasionally casting smug glances at Sam and Sarah. The security guard, Tony, kept his distance, eyeing Sam with suspicion and lingering discomfort. Sarah sat quietly, stroking Duke, feeling a strange sense of calm despite the situation, anchored by the unassuming presence of the old man beside her. Sam remained standing, still holding the back of her wheelchair, his gaze steady, occasionally scanning the room with an alertness that contradicted his age. The police arrived, 2 patrol officers, looking bored and ready to handle a standard, disruptive customer call. Brad immediately launched into a loud, exaggerated account of events, pointing at Sarah and Sam. "These two are refusing to leave. They're causing a scene, and they brought an animal in here." One officer, a young woman, approached Sarah professionally. "Ma'am, is this a service animal?" Sarah nodded, showing her documentation. The officer looked at Duke, who remained calm and quiet. The other officer, a burly man, approached Sam. "All right, sir, what's going on?" "Manager says you're interfering." Sam just looked at the officer, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak, not yet. The situation seemed to be devolving back into the predictable script. The authorities siding with the establishment, the vulnerable being removed. Brad looked triumphant. Then, something else happened. The door of the Oakwood Grill opened again. And this time, the air didn't just change. It crackled with authority. 2 men in impeccably tailored dark suits entered, their movements sharp and economical. They weren't police. There was something else about them, an intensity that commanded immediate attention. They scanned the room, their eyes missing nothing. Behind them entered a third man, older, with a gravitas that filled the space. He wore a suit that looked expensive but was less flashy, his face etched with deep lines of command and experience. He had silver hair and eyes that seemed to penetrate everything they looked at. The restaurant fell completely silent. Brad, momentarily forgotten by the police, stared, confused. Who were these people? The silver-haired man's eyes settled on Sam. And then, a remarkable transformation occurred on his face. The stern lines softened, replaced by an expression of profound respect, tinged with disbelief and emotion. He walked directly towards Sam, bypassing everyone else. The 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their eyes still scanning the room. The silver-haired man stopped a few feet from Sam. Sam, who hadn't moved or shown emotion through the police interaction, stood up straighter, a subtle shift in posture that spoke volumes. He met the man's gaze. "Sam?" the silver-haired man said, his voice deep and resonant, filled with awe. Sam gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The silver-haired man's eyes glistened. He extended his hand, not in a shake, but a formal, respectful offering. "It is you. My God, Sam. It's been too long." Sam took his hand briefly. "Robert," Sam said softly, recognizing the name from his earlier conversation with Brad. This was Robert Peterson, the owner of the restaurant. Brad, realizing who the silver-haired man was, snapped to attention, his face paling. "Mr. Peterson, sir. I didn't expect you." Peterson didn't even glance at him. His focus was entirely on Sam. One of the men in suits subtly showed a badge to the police officers, who immediately stepped back, their expressions turning from bored to utterly bewildered. The badge wasn't local law enforcement. It wasn't state. It was something else. The police officers exchanged wide-eyed glances. The silver-haired man, Robert Peterson, turned back to the room, his expression hardening. He looked at Brad, then at Sarah in her wheelchair, then at the comm service dog. "What?" Peterson said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone that froze everyone in place. "Is going on here, Brad?" Brad stammered, trying to regain his composure. "Sir, this woman brought a dog in, a pet, claiming it was a service animal, and this old man," he gestured dismissively at Sam, "was interfering, causing a disturbance. I was just enforcing policy. I called the police." He trailed off, his bravado dissolving under Peterson's icy stare. Peterson didn't yell. He didn't have to. His presence, the presence of the men with him, was enough. "Enforcing policy?" Peterson repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Against a service animal? Against a woman in a wheelchair?" He looked at Sam again, then back at Brad. "And you called the police? On him?" Peterson scoffed, a sound of pure contempt. He turned back to Sam. "Sam, I can't believe it's you, after all these years, in a place like this, and being treated like this." He shook his head, heartbroken. He turned to the stunned patrons. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying through the silent room, "you are witnessing a level of disrespect that is utterly unacceptable. This man," he placed a hand gently on Sam's shoulder, a gesture of deep reverence, "is not just an old man. He is Mr. Samuel Ainsworth." Peterson paused, letting the name hang in the air. He looked at Brad, his eyes blazing with fury. "Brad, you asked who he is? You showed him such contempt? Let me tell you, Mr. Samuel Ainsworth, sitting here quietly eating his soup, is one of the most decorated, most effective intelligence operatives this country has ever known. He served for decades in the shadows, in places you can't even imagine. He saved lives you'll never know about. He prevented conflicts that would have cost millions. He operated under the deepest cover. The name Nightingale was his operational code name. Spoken only in the highest circles, Peterson's voice rose, not in volume, but in intensity, capturing the attention of every single person in the restaurant. He wasn't just in the CIA, gentlemen. Peterson looked at the suits beside him. He founded divisions. He trained the best. He was a legend, and after putting his life on the line countless times, living a life of unimaginable sacrifice, he chose to retire here, seeking peace and anonymity. He turned back to Brad, his voice like ice. "And you treated him like a disruptive geezer for defending a disabled veteran and her service animal." The two men in suits stepped forward slightly. "Mr. Ainsworth's service," one of them stated, his voice crisp and official, "is classified at the highest level. He operated with distinction and unparalleled success. His protection of this young woman and her service animal today is entirely in character for a man who has dedicated his life to protecting others." The restaurant was utterly silent. Brad's face was ashen, his eyes wide with horror. He stared at Sam, the unassuming old man, and saw him through completely new eyes. The quiet strength, the cold focus, the subtle move that had made the security guard flinch. It all made terrifying sense now. Sarah was crying silently, tears of relief and stunned awe. Duke, sensing the shift, looked up at Sam, then at Peterson, his tail giving a gentle thump on the floor. Peterson turned his back on Brad, his expression full of remorse as he faced Sam. "Sam, I am so profoundly sorry this happened in my establishment. That anyone, especially one of my employees, would treat you or this young lady." He gestured towards Sarah. "With such utter lack of respect." It's unforgivable. He turned to Brad again, his voice cold and final. Brad, you're fired. Get out. Now. And consider yourself lucky that's all that happens. I'll be reviewing the security footage and every personnel file to ensure this kind of ignorance and cruelty is eradicated from my staff. Brad stumbled backward, muttering apologies, before turning and practically running towards the staff exit, the security guard trailing behind him, looking equally terrified. Peterson then turned to the police officers, who were standing rigid, their faces a mixture of shock and respect. Officers, thank you for your time. The situation is resolved. There will be no charges pressed, but I would appreciate if you could perhaps have a word with your department about recognizing legitimate service animals and the rights of their handlers. The officers nodded, saluted Sam, and quietly withdrew. Peterson knelt beside Sarah's wheelchair, his demeanor shifting back to kindness. Ma'am, my deepest apologies for how you were treated. Your meal is on the house, of course. And please, feel free to bring Duke here anytime. He is more than welcome. This establishment owes a debt of gratitude to Mr. Ainsworth for his intervention. And by extension, we honor those he chose to protect. Sarah, still tearful, managed a shaky smile. Thank you, she whispered, glancing gratefully at Sam. Sam finally spoke, his voice regaining its gentle quality. She and Duke were doing nothing wrong, Robert. Just needed a quiet meal. Peterson stood up, looking at Sam with a mixture of respect, admiration, and concern. Sam, why didn't you say anything? Let me know you were here? How are you? Sam gave a small shrug. Didn't need to. Just wanted a quiet life. Peterson put a hand on his shoulder again. A quiet life you've more than earned. Come, sit with me. My friends here. They're from the agency. They'd be honored to meet you properly. Sam hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He allowed Peterson to guide him back towards a more private table. As he walked through the now silent restaurant, people who had moments before ignored or judged him now looked at him with stunned respect, some even standing up slightly as he passed. The aura of quiet dignity he possessed was no longer just being old. It was the visible presence of a man who had walked with giants and borne the weight of the world. Sarah and Duke watched him go, a sense of profound gratitude in their hearts. The old man who had looked like nothing special was, in fact, extraordinary, a hidden protector. The incident served as a stark reminder to everyone present. True worth is rarely advertised, and the quietest people often carry the greatest stories and the deepest reserves of strength. The drama of the confrontation faded, replaced by the quiet hum of conversation resuming, albeit in hushed tones. The patrons had witnessed not just a scene, but a revelation. The restaurant, seconds before a stage for petty tyranny, became a place touched by history and humbled by the presence of a true, albeit hidden, hero. Sam sat with Robert Peterson and the two agency men, talking in low voices. There were no boasts, no grand pronouncements from Sam, just quiet confirmation, perhaps sharing a brief anecdote that hinted at depths none could truly comprehend. The men with Peterson listened with rapt attention, treating Sam not as a relic, but as the master he once was. The dignity that had been challenged was not just restored. It was magnified, reflecting the lifetime of honor Sam had lived, mostly in the shadows. He remained the unassuming old man, but now everyone who had seen understood. His quiet life was not the end of his story, but a peaceful chapter earned through extraordinary service. The lesson hung in the air, potent and clear. Never judge a book by its cover, especially when that cover conceals a legend. If this story touched you and reminded you of the importance of looking deeper and honoring service, share it. And if you want to hear more stories that reveal the hidden depths of human character and the power of respect, make sure to subscribe to my channel right now. Click that subscribe button and join our community that believes in the dignity of every person, no matter their appearance or circumstance.